Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we landed 22.6 meters away from our target position, which is absolutely close enough. And we're just going to grab what science we can here, so we'll keep both of these experiments. And then we're going to collect all that data up in the experiment storage unit. We are going to have Bob EVA. Bob is going to do like all of the work here unless we need somebody to get some XP. I'm not sure if we do or not. Let's hop on down over to here. We're just going to park right here, grab a surface sample, and then we're going to restore the Science Junior. And I want to open up this service bay. There we go. Can we reach this from here? Yes, we can. Perfect. So we're going to conduct the material study. We're going to observe the mystery goo. We're going to keep both of these experiments, not like they're worth much. We're going to collect this and restore, and collect and restore, and then we're going to observe one more time. And we're going to conduct the material study here. Perfect. We can now close the service bay and collect this data. Or actually, no, we don't want to collect that data. We need to restore that. Okay, we need to conduct this, and this stays here. That's what we want at this point. All I want to do here is I want to close the doors. Okay, now we're going to head on up here, not breaking the solar panels, ideally. That was close. And we're going to store what data we can up in here. A little closer. Okay, I'm going to retract these solar panels. There we go. Okay, now we're going to store what experiments we can here. Not all could be done here, but the surface sample could. So now we'll grab a second surface sample, and we've got all of our scientific data now. So let's head on down. And then we can drop off our EVA pack here. We can reach here, so that's perfect. We're going to grab the ionographer, and we're going to need to actually drop both of these for the moment. There we go. And now we can take the... There we go. Now we can take the ionographer. And I'm just going to position this out over here. So the ionographer is going to be put over here with the rest of the equipment. And it'll start collecting data and transmitting that back. Okay. Now we could land elsewhere in order to get more data. For the time being, I'm not too concerned about that. We'll get plenty of science. So there's the ionographer setup. Now, I want to do some potentially cheesy shenaniganery here. We'll see what that ends up feeling like. But that's going to be with the ground anchor here. We'll see what ends up happening with that. I'm going to try something. But for now, we need to set up the Guab ED monitor first. So Bob's going to hop on over here. And we're just going to put this down. As soon as he arrives over here. Need to be grounded in order to drop this, but there we go. Okay, so now we're going to deposit this right about here. And this should all be good at this point. So let's head over... That was awkward. Let's head over this direction and just take a look at what we've got here. So total power needed, 5. Total power available, 14. Hilarious. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. If we check the ionographer, we can see that this is generating science, and the Guab ED monitor also generating science. And we have a connection, correct? Yes. 3 signals connected, but we're not actually connected to Kerbin right now. Because we're on the far side. Okay. That'll flip around, and we'll get that connection. That's okay. So, now we need to set up our cheese factor. Because we have a contract here to dock together 2 vessels on or around Minmus. Now, I don't know if this is going to count. But we brought along this Stampatron ground anchor just in case. So, I'm going to try something cheesy here. And what we're going to try is we're going to try putting down this ground anchor, and this is going to go right here. Okay, so that's on the ground now, and we can see it is anchoring in. Okay, so the module is deployed at this point. Question is, does this count as docking? I think this is actually for construction. So you're intended to do Kerbal construction here, is my guess. So as a hypothetical, let's hop back over this direction. So I don't think we're going to be able to get this done. That's okay. We are absolutely fine with that. So let's head back into the capsule for now. So we're going to head back up over this direction and get ourselves lined up for the capsule hatch. There we go. And we're going to board. Some experiments cannot be held. We are okay with that. So I was hoping that this would have a Clampatron on it. Unfortunately, it did not. So I'm going to have Bill EVA here. And Bill is going to hop down over this direction. Anytime you want to turn your RCS on, that would be great, Bill. Okay, so Bill is going to head down over here for now. And my main question is this an attachment point? I believe that it is. So I'm going to go into Kerbal construction mode. And this is going to be kind of awkward. I'm going to grab this guy off of here. And yeah, you can see that's an attachment point. So this is now fixed to the ground surface and doesn't move as we move stuff through it. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. So that's going to be a very useful capability to have. I want to rotate this back the way it was. There we go. That's going to be a very useful capability to have when we start actually building our outposts. So this is definitely going to be a very, very good thing. Okay, we can exit Kerbal construction mode. We don't really have anything else to do here. We don't have anything that's going to end up being docked here, so there's not really any point in doing anything here. We're just going to send a couple of very light satellites out here and then probably crash them over here for the seismometer, but we're not going to get very much out of that. Or crash one of them and leave the other in orbit. Yeah, probably something along those lines. Bill? You okay over there? He's just happily floating. Okay. We'll grab here, and we'll board. Okay, so now we should be ready to head on home. Yeah, we'll do unmanned for the docking mission. That'll be fine. So let's just get out of here. And we are leaving. So 90 degrees is out over this direction. There we go. Let's retract our landing legs. We won't need them anymore. And at this point, I think we're high enough up that we can very, very easily head over to the horizon and get some horizontal velocity up here. I want to put us in kill rot. It's trying to take us to surface up, and that's not very useful. So we're just going to park right about here. Excellent. So we will need to achieve orbit here. Of course, that's not a particularly difficult thing to do around Minmus. So let's bring this up to, I don't know, 20k. That should be more than sufficient. 18, 19, and 20. Engine shut down, and at the apoapsis here, we're just going to put ourselves into orbit. That is not the button I wanted. Okay, so something along the lines of that. Cool. We'll lock to that node. And that's going to be in about 8 minutes, so we will warp to that. We're currently still suborbital, but, I mean, we're not very far away from orbit. As you can see here, 37 meters per second would put us into a circular orbit, so that's really not too bad. And we are out of here. So we'll start getting some of that science back passively. That'll be great. And we should do the same thing on the moon, but we're going to do that around our colony site. So 50 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay, let's enter orbit around Minmus. I'm not sure what our inclination is. It's probably a little wacky. That's okay. Actually, that's quite equatorial. Okay, we'll take it. So we can actually see our attachment point here, the Stampatron ground anchor. That's interesting for sure. So at this point, no, we're not equatorial at all. Hang on, I was just looking at it funkily. Yeah, that's not equatorial. That's okay. So we should be going prograde here, so burning somewhere around here should be our return trajectory. Yes, indeed. So that's 460 kilometers there. Let's just dial that down a little bit. And as we can see, this is going to be a bit problematic here in terms of the overall inclination, but it doesn't actually matter. So this is fine. Let's set this at about 30 kilometers. We're probably going to want to fine-tune that anyway on the way in. So that seems absolutely a-okay. We'll rotate around over to that burn point. There we go. We apparently weren't updated for that. Cool. And let's warp on over to that position. So we're getting into position for burning to Kerbin. This is still doing this. I tried to find solutions. I have so far failed. I'm not sure why it's doing that. I think this is something weird with the current NVIDIA drivers, but I don't know. That's my current theory, and if that's the case, there's not much I can do about it other than hope they fix it eventually. So 2, 1, 0, mark. We could revert back to older NVIDIA drivers. The problem is I don't know when that change was introduced because it's been like a year and a half since I played KSP1. So we'd have to go back quite a ways, and that could cause problems in other games. So I don't want to have to change drivers specifically for this game. If I did, I'd probably just set up like a VM or something for that. That would be a whole thing. At any rate, we've got about 40 meters per second left here, and that seems fine. 20 meters per second. 10. And 2.2 meters per second. Let's just get this relatively accurately, but we're going to fine-tune it on the way in anyway. So this seems absolutely fine. We overshot it a little bit. I don't really care. So we're probably on a pretty low trajectory here. Yeah, 23 kilometers. That's fine. I don't mind that. So our next position would be, yeah, we would be getting to the apoapsis. I don't think we need to do anything at the apoapsis. So really, we should warp to like here, right? Actually, we're going to be coming in this way. 10 days, 0 hours, and 10 day, 1 hour. Okay, we're coming in this way. That's what I expected. I was reading that wrong. Okay, so we're going to warp to about here. Excellent. And we'll keep an eye on our life support. I don't expect serious issues here. Our life support seems absolutely fine for now. We're building up a lot of speed, of course. As we come in, we're in a highly elliptical orbit, and that is absolutely expected. Unable to transmit data from Minmus because there's no connection right now. So a Consat around Minmus would not be a bad idea. And we do need to do a docking, right? So we could definitely do that. So at this point, we find ourselves here, and we need to do a re-entry / radial retrograde burn here. So I want to do a retrograde burn that's going to bring us down like this, and then a radial burn would bring it, you know, somewhere around here or so. This is a little too high, I think. So a little bit more retrograde here would do the trick. Yeah, something like this. This looks solid. So that'll be absolutely fine. And let's execute that. What would that apoapsis be? That is hidden behind the maneuver node, and I can't actually see it. Okay. Well, we'll find out. So that is absolutely fine. It should be okay. So we are orienting ourselves. This burn is going to be in about 40 minutes, and in 40 minutes, we're going to be a whole lot closer to Kerbin. And moving a lot faster as well. We're continuing to accelerate as we fall towards Kerbin, and that is fully expected. So about 20 more minutes. And our speed is continuing to increase. Excellent. Now we're about 1 minute away from this burn, and I'm seeing that our altitude is reasonable. I don't mind that. So this is going to be a fairly lengthy burn, but we've got about 50 seconds here. 40, 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay. Engine is lit, and we're going to be ditching these as soon as we're out of fuel on them. Oh, we were loading in some Kerbin stuff. Okay, sure. So we've got a fair amount of fuel here. Most of this fuel is going to be coming from these external strap-on tanks. That's fine. This thing is designed to land on Moon, right? It's pretty overkill for landing on Minmus. Good news is I don't think we'll need to get back there. I do want to get a communications satellite around Minmus, though. That will be a very, very useful thing. Maybe even 2. Just to be on the safe side. So that would be like 1 polar and 1... Actually, I'm thinking here, we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We definitely could. So this needs to be 2 different vessels. Yeah, we could make that happen. Okay. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to have 2 communication satellites. I think we have relay antennas. We'll need to check in on that, but we should have good enough relay antennas for that. And then we could set up a pair of communication satellites over the moon as well, just to get that over with. That would be a decent thing to do. I'm going to physics warp the rest of this burn, though. It's going kind of slowly. So let's cruise on through this burn. That'll be fine. And we're actually in space at this moment, or rather in the atmosphere. So let's retract our solar panels. Don't want to lose those if we can help it. And we're flying pretty high right now. I'm going to open up this service bay for the time being, and we can grab this atmospheric analysis and we can collect that. Then we can grab this atmospheric analysis and collect that. Pin this guy open for now. Okay, we don't have anywhere to store that, but that's okay. I don't think, yeah, we're probably not going to end up coming back here. That's absolutely fine. So I'm going to be ditching these fuel tanks very shortly here. Looking good thus far. We're still primarily working on our apoapsis height. Note how our periapsis height is raising at this moment. These fuel tanks are dry, so we're getting rid of them. Don't need them anymore. They will be in a decaying orbit. So that looks fine for the moment. We're still over the Kerbin Highlands at this juncture, and we're seeing our periapsis height continue to raise at this moment, so that looks fine. Time to periapsis is increasing, though, so we're not going to get there. That's understood. Okay, I'm going to call this good. We're going to park ourselves at surface velocity minus. So we're currently flying high over Kerbin's Highlands, and we are on our way in. We're over the Badlands now, though. Let's grab that. So I'm going to wait to burn off our speed differential here. We've got a fair amount of delta V left over here. I'm going to wait to burn that off until we're over water. I would definitely prefer that, if that ends up being an option, which it may or may not. So we're over Highlands right now. No data to be grabbed here. We'll see if there's any additional data available at all. Grasslands we've got plenty of, so no issue there. Okay, let's go up to 4x time warp for now as we go through here. We are going to be dropping, of course. This is over Highlands. Okay, that's fine. I'd prefer to land in water, but land landings are acceptable. But let's just keep on cruising for the moment. Let's go into surface velocity for now. Plasma sheath starting to build up. I'm going to grab this atmospheric analysis, and I'm going to close this service bay at this point. So that'll be fine. And we'll just continue to cruise on through the atmosphere here. We're just trying to get to a point of water, ideally. We are slowing down. Not much water between us and where we're going, it looks like. So this may end up being a land landing. This looks like this might be a coastline up here, though. Yeah, that looks like a coastline. I think we're okay here. Yep. Cool. So no land landing required. This will, in fact, be a water landing. So I see that we have some mountains building up over here, so I'm going to... Where are we? Aha. This is definitely coastline. I don't really see it here, but I think I'm going to burn off fuel here. There's a pretty narrow body of water here, so we need to try to hit that pretty closely. I want to keep an eye on how much burn time we have remaining here. Mountains. Unfortunate, but we've got this plasma sheath. I'm not going to risk it. Okay, we're going to be over the water very, very shortly here. We're just continuing to burn here for a little while. I want to burn off all of this fuel, actually, and just expose the heat shield, ideally. So we're slowing down a decent amount here. We've got about 45 seconds of burn time left. Thrust to weight is currently 1.0, so that's decent. Yeah, I think we're probably not going to make it to this land, hopefully. Yeah, I don't think we're going to. So 30 seconds. And continuing to burn here. We're moving a lot more slowly now. That's the good news here. We've got about 15 seconds of burn time left, and then we're going to ditch that. We may have been better off to just ditch it and expose the heat shield for additional drag. I don't know. But I think it looks like we may end up being pretty safe here. Okay, we're out of fuel. So there we go. Drogues out. The drogues are going to get rid of a lot of our horizontal velocity here, and that's very good for us. Main is not safe to deploy yet. Now it is. Okay, we should be coming down in the water, for sure. Excellent. Water landing is, of course, best. We run very little risk of losing any parts with a water landing. And this would be a little long, like, in terms of height, it'd be a little tall for a land landing. I'd jettison the heat shield if we were going to do a land landing and try to stand on this, but with the heat shield there, it's rounded, right? This is a blunt heat shield here, so we would just roll right off of that and fall onto our side, which we would definitely prefer not to do. That would be awkward. So we're currently traveling at about 10 meters per second, which is completely safe for a splashdown. Looks perfect. In we come, and we've got this nice, what is this? Is this a sunrise or a sunset? I don't actually know. What direction is this? I believe that is a sunrise. Excellent. And here we are in the water. We can actually get ourselves a surface sample here. Sure, 0.8 science. Why not? We'll grab that. We could actually get another one for 0.2 science. Done. Okay, so let's recover that, and that will be absolutely fine. I think our next mission is definitely a Consat pairing to both Moon and Minmus, giving us much, much better coverage on our communications. So we do need to do a docking around Minmus. That's a thing we could do. And then have a very light communication satellite. That is a very aggressive bird. Okay. That bird is birding. Excellent. Okay, so there's all of that science. 46.5. Honestly, kind of better than I expected for that mission. I want to check mission control here. Build a new surface outpost on Minmus. I think we'll pass on this for right now. Surface deployed ion collector science. We just put that up. So let's grab that. That'll be absolutely fine. And now we need to set up communication satellites. So we need to do... In the future, we can launch them as a pair. For this particular mission, we would need to do 2 separate vessels for this docking contract. I'd like to get that docking contract complete. So, to that end, we'd go with like a Prototype Octo as our core here. It would definitely be unmanned, and to that end, we would then have like a docking port up at the top. So that would be coupling. Here we go. So we go with like a Clampatron docking port junior, like this. For solar panels, it wouldn't need much. We would just have like a pair of probably non-retractable, because we're not planning on bringing these back, a pair of solar panels like this. We may want to have a little bit of battery on here, so maybe do that on top of here, like this. Or we could have them be side strapped, kind of like this. Like that. Then we'd have a small fuel tank. Pylon on steroids. Carried by Kerbals. What does this actually do? It's a battery. Okay. Apparently that's a battery. Cool. Well, we're going to grab ourselves a fuel tank here for sure. This would need to have a fairly small fuel tank. We might be able to get away with like an Oscar C liquid fuel tank like this, and then go with a very, very small, very efficient engine like the, not really the Pug, maybe like the Spark. So something like that. What is the specific impulse of that? 320 in the vacuum? Yeah, that's probably okay. So if we look at the DV of this thing over Minmus, the DV over Minmus is 1409. So we need to deliver this, but this would also still need to have a communications array, right? Specifically, we would need to have this is only a data transmitter. We'd need a relay antenna, which is like one of these. An RA15 would do the trick. Now, normally I'd put it up here. That's where our docking port is. This could be a little awkward. So the high gain antenna isn't a relay antenna, I don't believe. So data transmitter, antenna type relay. Yeah, this is actually a relay antenna. So the HG5 should do the trick then. So in that case, we can put in an HG5 down here. And what's the range on that? That should be plenty for going to Minmus, right? And we can upgrade this for Duna Consats later on. So something along the lines of this, which should be approximately what we need. Now, I actually kind of want to store this high gain antenna differently. We could store it facing like this direction. Hang on. Facing like this direction. And then it would extend like that, which I feel like is a little bit more out of the way. I don't necessarily love the fact that it's clipping into the battery here. We could just go down to a single battery over on this side to kind of counteract the weight. Kind of like that. I wonder how controllable that'll be. Let's look at the center of mass here. That doesn't really shift the center of mass at all. Okay, so that's good to know. So we need to deliver this thing. And that's absolutely fine. So we would need to put in a very, very small decoupler, a TD06 decoupler like this. And then we'd need, ideally, a fuel tank that adapts up. So let's see what we've got here for that. This would take us up to a 150 size. So yeah, that's a little too big. That's not the correct upper size. Maybe it's this one? Nope. What about this guy? No, definitely not. No. There's some variation of these that we could definitely go for. So there is this, which takes us up to that size. But this is the size that we want to be at, right? I think we're lacking a few adapters at this point. Let's just do a search here. Adapt. Okay. So this is just a regular adapter here. And that would be the right size. So we'll go for that for now. I'm not going to go with a T100 here. We're going to go with a T400. And that is going to be something kind of like, or actually a T200? Yeah, I think a T200 would be plenty for this. So then we would go for an engine here. This is going to end up being like the Terrier. Something like that. And then a TD12 decoupler. Like this guy. And then we would put on, I'm not sure what the thrust to weight here is going to look like. So we would put on like a pair of T800s. And then like a swivel. We might have a little bit of issue with the thrust to weight here. Let's see what that would look like. 1.34. So a couple of like strap-on SRBs would be fine. Do we have a fairing that we can put this in? Let's see here. Payload. Yeah, so a 1.25 meter fairing would be a good idea here. So we'd put in a fairing about like that. There we go. And we're a little low on thrust to weight on this swivel engine at this point, so a pair of strap-on boosters isn't a terrible idea. I'm going to cheap out on these. We're going to go for 2 of them, and it's going to be a couple of, like, little hammers, probably, just to get us moving off the pad, right? That would be the idea here. So these guys would go here. That would put us at 2.85, which is a lot. Let's thrust limit that down a bit. We don't need this thrust to weight to be that high. Also, this should be over Kerbin. I don't know if that changes this. 1.74? Okay. So this is looking decent. Let's bring this down to be, yeah, about here. That looks fine, but I'm going to add in a little bit of thrust. Let's put this at 40. And we could put nose cones on here. We could strut them on. I'm thinking right now that we would put on, those are too big. Hemispherical fuel tanks like that to have just a little bit of extra fuel for this. And then we would... Fuel tanks. Here we go. We'd run a fuel line like this. There we go. And then a pair of struts would come down here. We probably don't need these, but I'd like to just provide a little bit of stability here. That's probably enough stability. This is probably overkill. So that should do the trick there. 1.58 at this point. Okay, let's try 41% thrust. 1.6. Okay, that should do the trick. So that'll be fine. This is probably sufficient at this point, and yeah, that should be relatively fine. So the spacecraft itself is going to have quite a lot of DV, and this should absolutely do the trick. Now, in later iterations, we will replace this Clampotron docking port Junior with a RA-15 relay antenna, and we'll drop this high-gain antenna, probably putting in a radial battery here. But for this iteration, this will be fine. So we're going to call this the Consat. There we go. And it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to see if this thing needs fins. I don't know. We'll find out. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALVS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.